So it happened on my 68th birthday, in my own backyard, with my name spelled wrong on the cake. The air smelled like overcooked brisket and cheap citronella candles, a dozen lawn chairs, none for me. Rachel was snapping selfies by the pool. Henry poured drinks like it was his party. Emily, my 10-year-old granddaughter, handed me a paper plate, one plastic fork, no napkin. Then came the voice, sharp, just loud enough to carry. She's just the babysitter now. I don't know why she's even here. Rachel! My daughter-in-law, wife to my only son, mother of my only grandchild. The words didn't fall. They detonated. I stood behind the cooler, holding a warm can of root beer. My hand didn't shake. Not yet. The condensation slid down the aluminum. The can hissed quietly as I cracked it open. Nobody said a word. No one defended me. Henry looked away. Emily's eyes widened. Then she stared at her flip-flops. Even the dog, my old mutt Cooper, curled under the table and didn't move. I took a sip. Sweet, flat, insulting. Thanks for having me, I said, to no one in particular. My voice didn't quiver. My smile stayed. That was the scariest part. Rachel had already turned back to her phone, posing like this was her house, her party, her legacy. I watched her, the way her diamond bracelet caught the light. My bracelet, the one Martin gave me on our 20th. She didn't know I saw. She never thinks I see, but I see everything. I saw the stack of unopened mail she'd moved from the counter, letters addressed to me. I saw the checkbook she accidentally took. I saw the way she signed my name, curling the E wrong. Estelle with an, not Estella. It's funny, the things you notice when no one's looking at you. Funny how people think invisibility comes with age. They're wrong. It comes with underestimation.
Grandma, do you want cake?
Emily asked quietly, tugging my sleeve. No, baby, I said, touching her hair. But thank you for asking. One person still saw me. I glanced around that backyard. Cheap decorations, borrowed tables, the gas grill Martin bought on discount in under 9, the space he loved, the space I kept after he passed. Now it was theirs. Or so they thought. Don't just stand there, Rachel said louder. Make yourself useful and grab napkins. We're out? She didn't look at me when she said it. Didn't need to. It was a command. Like I worked for her, like I owed her. But here's the thing about women like me. We remember. We remember every slice of birthday cake we baked. Every mortgage payment we covered. Every holiday we were excluded from, smiling through the silence. I picked up the empty cake box, walked to the trash, and saw it, shoved between paper plates and old foil, a manila envelope, torn open, my name on it, the deed. My heart thudded once, sharp and low. I took a breath, folded the box, tucked the envelope inside my sweater when no one watched. Then I turned, smiled again. Happy birthday to me, I whispered. You see, I didn't fight that day. Not yet. But something changed. In my bones. In my silence. In the way I finally stopped expecting them to remember who I was. I knew one thing: they thought I was just the babysitter now. But I was still the owner of the house. And they were about to learn that in the quietest way possible. It was a Tuesday when we first saw the house. Martin had pulled into the gravel driveway with a proud little grin, his calloused hand resting on the wheel like it belonged there. He wore his favorite flannel that day, the green one with a tear on the elbow, and the smell of gasoline still clung to his skin from the shop. She needs love, he said, nodding toward the sagging porch. She needs a roof, I laughed. But we both saw it, the bones. The wide windows. The way the sunlight fell on the porch like it was waiting for someone to come home. We bought it a month later. We painted every wall, every cabinet by hand. I scraped wallpaper while Martin installed ceiling fans. On summer evenings, we grilled cheap steaks and drank lemonade on the back steps, watching our boy, just a toddler, run barefoot in the yard chasing fireflies. That yard, the grass never came in even. Martin would joke that it had a bald spot like him. But I loved that yard. It held birthdays, scraped knees, and one night, a telescope pointed at Jupiter when Henry was 7 and thought the stars could hear him. If I grow up rich, he whispered once, head tilted skyward, I'll buy you a beach house. I never wanted a beach house, just the house we had. I took a second job at the clinic when Martin's hours got cut. It was nights mostly. I'd leave a thermos of soup in the fridge and notes on the counter, leftover meatloaf. Don't forget spelling test. Martin never once complained. Even when he got the diagnosis, pancreatic, it came like a crack of thunder on a dry day. No warning, just a numb echo. He lasted 11 months. In those months, he kept fixing things, the leaky faucet, the shed door, even the fence post that refused to stay straight. He said, if I keep doing, I'm still here. We buried him on a cold Friday. Henry didn't cry. He held Emily's hand the whole time. Rachel wore black like it was a red carpet gown. That was the first time I felt edged out. Her arm looped through Henry's like glue. Every time I spoke, her eyes slid past me. Later, at the repast, she asked if I still planned to stay in the house alone. I said yes. She said, it might be time to let go. Let go of what? The paint on the walls? The ghosts in the hallway? I stayed. I cleaned Martin's workbench but never moved a thing. His hammer still hung on the hook, his flannel still folded in the linen closet under the towels. Years passed. I hosted holidays, watched Emily after school. I kept things going. I made my peace with the quiet. Until things stopped being quiet, it started small. Rachel suggesting I didn't need to bring pies anymore, they had catering. Rachel saying I could just drop off Emily instead of staying. Rachel asking for my keys to help organize. Then the suggestion became expectation. I found furniture moved. My tea mugs replaced with modern ones. A list on the fridge that said, grocery notes, but in her handwriting.
Not mine.
I asked Henry once, gently, if they needed space. He kissed my forehead. It's not that, Mom. She just likes control. Control. Martin used to say you can tell who someone is by how they handle small power. Rachel handled it like a queen with no crown.
Still, I stayed quiet.
Until my birthday. Until the moment in the backyard when I realized I hadn't just been edged out. I'd been erased. And the worst part, they thought I wouldn't notice. But I remember every wall I painted. Every birthday candle I lit. Every night I fell asleep waiting for a child to come home safe. That house was built on something real, and I was done pretending I didn't still own it. The invitation came via text, dinner at our place, 6 p.m. casual, no punctuation, no warmth, just Rachel's usual clipped tone. Still, I ironed my blouse, the blue one Martin liked. I baked a pecan pie. I even tied a yellow ribbon around the gift I'd picked for Emily, a small hardcover journal with her initials embossed in gold. When I arrived, no one opened the door. I stood outside, holding the pie with both hands, heart tapping steady behind my ribs. Finally, Emily peeked through the curtain. A beat later, the door creaked open. "Grandma, you could have just come in," she whispered, eyes darting behind her. Inside, the lights were low. Candles flickered along the table, which was already set. White plates, cloth napkins, crystal glasses they never used.
Oh, is this formal? Emily shrugged.
Mom said casual. But then she changed her mind. I followed her into the kitchen, the scent of rosemary chicken thick in the air. Rachel stood at the counter, plating roasted carrots with surgical precision. "You're early," she said, not looking up. 6 o'clock, I replied gently. Everyone else is fashionably late. I set the pie on the counter. Rachel gave it a glance, then covered it with foil. "Store-bought crust? No homemade like always," she hummed. Not quite approval.
Not quite anything.
Henry appeared, phone in hand, hair still damp from the shower. "Hey, Mom," he said, leaning in with a quick side hug. His eyes didn't meet mine. The doorbell rang and suddenly the house filled. Voices, perfume. Rachel's parents? A couple from Henry's office, even Jody and her new boyfriend. A dozen people. No one I truly knew. I helped Emily bring out water glasses. Napkins, bread. The journal gift sat in my purse by the hallway table. Then dinner began. The seating chart was deliberate. I was placed at the far end, next to the coat rack, away from Henry, between Jody and someone named Ben who kept texting under the table. Rachel clinked her glass. "Thank you all for coming. It means the world to have our chosen family together." I smiled, bit my tongue. Plates passed. Conversation flowed. Rachel dominated, telling stories about a conference in Chicago. She didn't look at me once. Dessert time. We picked up a lovely tiramisu from that French place downtown. Rachel announced. My pie stayed untouched on the sideboard. Grandma made pecan pie, Emily said softly. Rachel blinked. "That's sweet, honey, but some people have nut allergies." "Ooh!" I asked. Silence. "It's just better safe than sorry," Rachel added, smiling tight. Then Jody, ever helpful, chirped up. "Didn't she make that last Thanksgiving too? Maybe it's a comfort dish. Lauder, polite sharp." I folded my hands. Then Rachel turned, wine glass in hand, voice sugar dipped. "Actually, let's give Estelle a round of applause. After all, she's been such a help lately. With Emily? And errands and existing, scattered claps." Jody snorted. Someone choked on a laugh. I looked at Henry, he looked at his plate. Emily opened her mouth, closed it. Something inside me cracked. I reached for the pie, wrapped it in its foil, carried it back to the kitchen like a wounded animal. Then I opened my purse, took out the journal, ran my finger over the gold letters. I placed it back inside, zipped it slowly. Back at the table, no one noticed I was gone, but they would. It started with an envelope left on the kitchen table. "Just a few forms, Estelle," Rachel said breezily over her shoulder. "Stuff for the insurance. House maintenance junk." I glanced down. 3 pages. A few sticky notes. One yellow tab said, "Sign here." The text was small legal. The kind you skim because someone smiles and tells you not to worry. I didn't sign right away. "Do I need to read it?" I asked. Rachel laughed.
Of course not.
"It's just bureaucracy. You're still on the deed, right? These are just to streamline a few things. Tax season and all." She said it with the ease of someone used to being believed.
Still, I read.
Or tried. But the letters swam dense and dry. After 10 minutes, my head ached. Henry came home and gave me a peck on the cheek. "Everything good, Mom?" "Rachel wants me to sign something." He glanced at the table. "Ah, yeah. She's sorting some refinance stuff. It helps you too." He squeezed my shoulder. "She's just trying to help, so I signed." 3 places. Pen smooth, trust easy. That night, I couldn't sleep. Martin always read the fine print, even on gum wrappers. He called it a poor man's defense. My gut was uneasy. 2 weeks passed. Then the mail started coming differently. One envelope arrived addressed to R. Crowley, primary account holder. I held it, turned it over. Unopened. I asked Rachel. She shrugged. "Must be a mistake." Then I noticed something else. My bank statements were lighter. Less frequent. I logged into the account from my phone. The joint account Martin and I opened in 1993. The one where I deposited my retirement, our savings, the proceeds from the old Chevy he sold before he passed, balance E401217. My breath caught. I stared. Blinked. Hit refresh. Same number. We had over 38,000 in there last I checked.
Gone.
The transaction log showed transfers, regular, consistent. Always in even numbers, 2,300. Once, 7 to Lozen, to a separate account I didn't recognize. I sat at the kitchen table. The light buzzed overhead. The room felt colder somehow. I printed the statement. Henry came in, saw the papers. Froze. "What's this?" "You tell me." He rubbed his temple. "Rachel was just trying to consolidate. You weren't using the money?" "I wasn't hers to use." He didn't respond. "Martin left that for both of us for me?" Still nothing. I picked up the papers, my hands shaking now. "Do you think being quiet means I don't notice?" "That I don't care." "You signed, Mom." That stung more than it should have, because you told me to trust her. She handles the finances. "I don't." I stood up. Too fast, my knee throbbed. I steadied myself on the counter. "I want it back." Henry looked exhausted, or guilty, maybe both. "I'll talk to her." But he didn't. A week passed. Then 2 I waited, watched. Nothing changed, so I changed. I called the bank, booked an appointment, quietly. "Can I help you, Mrs. Crowley?" "Yes," I said. "I need to know exactly who has access to my money." The teller blinked. "Do you have your ID?" "I have everything." She pulled the file. Her brow furrowed. "Looks like this account was recently converted to joint business access. You're technically a co-signer now, not the primary. Since when?" She clicked.
Read. Paused.
"About 6 weeks ago? That was the day I signed." "And who's listed as the primary now?" "Rachel Crowley." I closed my eyes. Then I opened them and said, "I want a new account in my name, only mine." She nodded. That night, I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I made tea, sat by the window, watched the porch light flicker. I let the anger settle into something sharper. Resolve. They took what wasn't theirs, but they forgot. I built this life, brick by brick, nail by nail, and I was not done building. The house got quieter, not in volume, in attention. Rachel and Henry spoke around me, not to me. Conversations that once paused when I entered now continued. Like I wasn't there, like I was static in the background. A coat rack, a lamp. I'd ask what the plan was for dinner. "Oh, we already ordered something?" Rachel would say, gesturing to 2 empty takeout boxes in the trash. The smell of sesame oil lingered long after. Once I found a calendar pinned to the fridge. A week of events. A weekend cabin trip. Emily's school play. Henry's work dinner. All color-coded. All planned. Not a single mention to me. They used to include me. Even out of habit. Now I was a ghost who left dishes too loud in the sink. I tried to make myself smaller, quieter. I stopped watching TV in the living room. I took my tea back to my room. Even my bedroom started feeling foreign. The quilt I'd stitched in '84 was gone, replaced with a gray duvet. My rocking chair had been moved to the garage. For space, Rachel swapped out the curtains. Said they were too old-fashioned. I found a label on one of my keepsake boxes, "Donate." I peeled it off. Slowly. One morning, I opened the cabinet and found my tea canisters gone. A row of protein powders and collagen tubs stood in their place. "Oh," Rachel said, not looking up from her phone. "We're redoing the pantry. You didn't really use that tea, did you?" I wanted to say I use it every day, but the words sat heavy. That night, I tried to tell Henry how I felt. He nodded, said he was tired. He had meetings in the morning. The next day, Rachel moved the car keys. I couldn't find them. We're limiting Emily's screen time, she explained. And the keys were by her charger. I didn't understand. What did that have to do with me? I stopped asking. Until Emily came into my room one afternoon. She had her backpack on, her eyes shining. Grandma, guess what? We're going to the aquarium tomorrow. I blinked.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
She tilted her head. Aren't you coming? Wasn't invited, sweetheart. Her face fell, but I told them I wanted you to come. That night, I watched from the window as the car pulled out of the driveway without me. Emily looked back. Henry didn't. I sat with a blanket on my lap. The one Martin gave me for our 40th anniversary, blue flannel, still warm after all these years. The next week, I made meatloaf, Henry's favorite, the one with the crushed saltines instead of breadcrumbs. I left it in the fridge with a note. When I came back that evening, it was untouched. A bag from Olive Garden sat on the counter. No one said a word. The silence thickened like fog. Not anger, not even avoidance, just absence. I realized one morning I hadn't been called by my name in over a week. Could you move that? She already had breakfast. Is she still here? She now? I was background, except to Emily. She would crawl into bed with me some nights, book in hand. I like it better in here, she'd whisper. It smells like cookies, she'd read to me. Or I'd read to her. She'd braid my hair and ask me about stars, about what Martin was like, about when her dad was her age. She saw me. She was the last one who did. And I held on to that, because the house had shrunk, not in walls, in welcome, and I knew. Deep down, the next chapter wouldn't just be silent. It would be cruel. Public, and I would be ready. The invitation surprised me, a printed card on thick cream stock, tucked into my bedroom doorframe. Annual garden fundraiser Sunday at 2 p.m. hosted by Rachel and Henry Crowley.
No, dear Mom.
No personal note. Just the time, the place, and my name typed in the smallest font. Still, I went. I wore my plum cardigan. The one Martin said brought out my smile. I tied my hair back with Emily's favorite scarf, baked lemon bars from scratch, using Meyer lemons from the old tree by the garage. The yard was transformed. Fairy lights strung across the pergola. White folding chairs in perfect rows. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Caterers bustled near the grill. Rachel had outdone herself. I scanned the crowd, neighbors, school officials, even the mayor's wife. Rachel floated among them like a swan, all pearls and practiced laughter. She saw me but didn't wave. Henry stood by the drink table. When I approached, he gave me a nod, just a nod, as if I were a guest, not his mother. Lemon bar, I offered. He looked at them like they were foreign. I think Rachel already arranged dessert, he said, glancing toward the buffet. So I carried my plate to the side and sat alone near the hydrangeas. Emily spotted me and darted over. You came? Of course I did, I smiled. You look lovely. She twirled in her blue dress. I helped with the centerpieces. Mom let me pick the colors. They're beautiful. Sweetheart. Emily opened her mouth to say something more, but Rachel's voice cut across the yard.
Not now.
We're about to start. Emily hesitated, then ran back. I stayed seated. Rachel took center stage by the fountain, microphone in hand. Thank you all for coming, she began. We're thrilled to host this year's garden fundraiser and support the local food bank. It means so much to gather with friends, neighbors, and extended family. The way she said extended curled in my chest like ice. She gestured toward Henry. Couldn't have done it without my wonderful husband, who stayed up all night printing programs. Lauder. And of course, Emily, our creative director. More laughter. Then her eyes landed on me, and my mother-in-law Estelle, who kindly showed up. With lemon bars, there was a pause. But don't worry, folks. They're labeled this time. No surprise nuts, no vintage Tupperware, and we promise no food poisoning. The laughter this time was louder. I felt every head tilt toward me. Someone snorted. Rachel smiled sweetly as if she'd just given me a compliment. Henry said nothing. I stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. I walked toward the table and placed the lemon bars down. Then I walked away from the crowd, pretending not to hear the murmurs, the stifled giggles, the glance someone gave me like I was a relic that hadn't learned to stay tucked away. At the edge of the yard, behind the rose trellis, I paused. My breath shook. I wasn't angry. I was tired. I leaned against the wooden lattice, watching bees buzz lazily over the blooms, the perfume of roses mixed with grilled salmon and fresh cut lawn. Then I heard them. Rachel and Henry, on the other side of the hedge. I told you not to let her bring anything. Rachel snapped. I didn't think she would. Henry said low. She always has to insert herself.
Always. It's pathetic.
Silence. I'm moving the account again, Rachel continued. She's starting to snoop. I'll use my brother's name this time. My body went cold. Henry didn't argue. He just said, okay. I stayed frozen. They walked away. I waited a full minute before moving. My legs ached, but my spine was straight. My heart beat steady, not with panic, but clarity. Rachel thought I was weak. She thought her little jabs went unnoticed, but I had just heard enough to know she was scared. Why else hide things? Why else move money? Why else humiliate me again and again if not to push me into silence? Well, I was done being silent. I turned back toward the party, not to rejoin it, but to mark the moment, because today wasn't the day I fought back, but it was the day I began to prepare. I waited until Monday. Rachel left for her pilates class and Henry was on a conference call. Emily had gone to school, her backpack bouncing behind her like a heartbeat I could still feel. I slipped out quietly, lemon bar tin in hand, not as dessert but as a decoy, the kind of thing people expect you to carry. Something that says harmless, sweet, forgettable. The bank was 10 blocks away. I walked. The teller recognized me. She smiled too brightly. I'd like to speak with someone in account services, I said. Of course, Mrs. Crowley. 10 minutes later, I sat across from a woman named Bernice. She wore square glasses and a wedding ring that matched the ones Martin and I used to polish together with toothpaste when money was tight. What can I help you with today? I slid over a note I had written by hand. I want a full printout of all transactions made from the following accounts under my name between March and July. I want names attached to each withdrawal or transfer. Bernice read it, raised an eyebrow. This might take a few minutes. I've got time, she typed. Her nails clicked like Morse code. The printer behind her began to spit out pages, 47 in total. I read every one, line by line, date by date, signature by signature. The transfers Rachel had made weren't just withdrawals. They were relocations, marked as approved disbursements through a trust account I'd never heard of. Each form bore a signature. Mine. Except it wasn't. My hand trembled slightly as I pointed to one. I didn't sign this. Bernice looked again. It does appear digital, possibly scanned. But it's under your login credential. Did you grant anyone access to your online account? No. Her lips thinned. Then you may need to open a fraud claim. My throat felt dry. Can I get copies of everything? All the forms, all access logs. And can you tell me who this account belongs to? I pointed to the routing number Rachel had used frequently. Bernice checked the system. Paused. It's under a Ronald Whittaker? Not Rachel's name? Not Hender's? I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I was finally seeing it all. The gaslight, the slow erasure, the isolation. It wasn't just emotional control. It was methodical. It was a plan. Rachel had moved the money under someone else's name, possibly to avoid it being traced, possibly so I couldn't confront her directly. She had turned my own signature into a tool against me. I stood up. I need a notary, I said. For what? To certify that I was here, that I requested this, that I did not authorize these transfers. She nodded. We can do that. 2 hours later, I walked out with a folder, neatly labeled, dated, initialed, and in my coat pocket a phone number. Jerry Lutz, Martin's old friend from the Army, a financial investigator turned CPA. He helped us once, years ago, when a contractor tried to swindle Martin on a repair job. He knew the system, and he knew me. I called from a payphone near the CVS, not my cell. He picked up on the second ring. Jerry Lutz. Hi, Jerry. Pause. Estelle Crowley. Good Lord, it's been years. Yes. I need your help. I told him the basics. Not everything, just enough. Send me what you have, he said. Let me dig first. Quietly. I faxed the documents from a shipping store. I walked home slower. Not because I was tired. Because I wasn't walking aimlessly anymore. I had a destination now. That night, Rachel didn't notice anything had changed. She was too busy on her tablet, scrawling through throw pillows for the upstairs guest room. Henry was too tired to ask where I'd been. Emily came in to say goodnight, hugging me longer than usual. Grandma, she whispered. Yes. You're gonna be okay, right? I kissed her forehead. I always am. 3 days later, Jerry called. Your hunch was right. She's good, but she's sloppy. Some of the forms she used, old versions, outdated since 2020, legally invalid. I sat down. She forged 3 of your digital authorizations. And that trust account under her brother's name. It was opened 2 weeks before Martin passed. My fingers curled. She was planning this long before you ever moved in. Silence stretched between us. Then he added, I've seen worse, but not by much. Can you help me take it back? Absolutely. But you need to be strategic. I don't want to blow it up. I know. You want quiet justice. Exactly, he chuckled. You were always sharper than people gave you credit for. I smiled. Not because it was a compliment, but because he was right. Rachel thought she'd erased me, but I'd always kept the receipts. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Not really. I'd lie in bed beneath the flannel throw, the one Martin spilled wine on that Thanksgiving he tried to deep fry a turkey, and I'd stare at the ceiling as the house breathed around me. The furnace kicked in at 2004 a.m. The refrigerator buzzed at 3017. The pipes knocked once at 4012, soft like a memory tapping for permission. That first night I cried, not loud. Just tears that slipped sideways onto the pillow, quiet and warm. Not because of the money, not even because of Rachel. But because Martin would have seen this coming. He'd warned me once, not in anger but in concern. She's got eyes that calculate L, not eyes that soften. I hadn't listened, and now here I was. In the home we built with our hands and our habits, treated like clutter in the corner. On night 2 I got up, wrapped myself in my robe, made chamomile tea. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened his drawer. In the bottom of the armoire, behind 3 old maps and a cracked compass, Martin had kept a weathered red notebook. It smelled like cedar and coffee. Inside were pages and pages of handwritten notes, contacts, diagrams, passwords, even quotes. At the top of one page in block letters, he'd written, "A system built to control you will collapse if you don't play." Beneath that, "When they think you're quiet, prepare loud paperwork." I laughed. A single, bitter breath, and ran my fingers down the ink. Martin hadn't left me without tools. I just hadn't known where to look. I turned to the last pages. There it was, a list. Safe deposit box, Midtown branch, 4th and Cherry, attorney Roland Pressman retired, but discreet notary contact D. Talia Farrow works weekends, old will keep copy, H3 separate emergency fund, check VHS box marked wedding video. At dawn I went to the closet, pulled the VHS box, no wedding tape inside, just 9,300 in small bills rolled tight and wrapped in a rubber band. Martin, always hiding things in plain sight. The next morning I made pancakes for Emily, listened to Rachel complain about HOA fees, nodded as Henry talked about refinancing options for a lake house. I smiled. Not because I forgave them, but because I had something now they couldn't steal, a plan. By noon I'd called Mr. Pressman. "Estelle Crowley. Of course I remember you. Martin spoke highly of you, even when he didn't speak highly of many. I need to update some documents," I said, quietly. He didn't ask questions. That afternoon, I visited the Midtown branch. I opened the box. Inside was Martin's copy of our original will, plus an old flash drive labeled Plan B. I didn't plug it in yet. I wanted the moment to feel intentional. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I sat at the kitchen table and made my own list. I titled it, "Things They Think I Don't Know." Rachel has been using Ronald's account to funnel funds. Henry is silent because he benefits, not because he believes her. They've cut me out emotionally, financially, and socially. They think I won't fight back. They think being old means being done. I drew a line. Then wrote, "Things they don't know I'm doing. Reopening private checking account, updating will transferring deed copy to new attorney, collecting documented proof of financial fraud, setting endgame date, October 3rd, that was Martin's birthday. He would have liked that. A quiet reckoning. I went to bed that night and slept. Not long, but deep. The next morning, I put the notebook back where I found it. Then I brewed my tea. My tea, the one Rachel had tossed but I'd reordered online, shipped to the CVS locker. Cinnamon apple with a hint of clove. I drank it slowly, and as I watched the morning light slide across the tile floor, I thought I may be small in their eyes, but I am not invisible. And I am not done. It started with the mailbox. A simple thing, but I rerouted every piece of my mail to the P.O. box at the downtown post office. Rachel liked to hover around the kitchen when the envelopes dropped through the slot. She'd fish out the thick ones, flipping through them like they were coupons. But now, all she found were flyers and magazines she never read. I opened a new email too, under a different name, just initials. Estelle M. Crowley became EMC.72 professional. Forgettable. Quiet. Every notification, from the bank, from Jerry, from Roland the attorney, came there. Next, I visited the county clerk's office. Martin had always insisted we keep a copy of the house deed separate from our will. Turns out he was right. While Rachel had tampered with the financial accounts, she hadn't touched the deed because she didn't know where it was. But I did. The clerk pulled the record. It was still under both our names, Martin and me. Joint ownership. No mention of Henry. No mention of Rachel, not even as future heirs. Would you like to amend or transfer it today, Mrs. Crowley? The woman asked, tapping her keyboard. Not today, I said, but I left with 2 certified copies and filed one in a newly rented safe deposit box. My next stop was Roland Pressman's office. He was older now, mostly retired, but sharp. Updating a will isn't just about revenge, he said, peering over his reading glasses. It's about protection, yours, and the legacy you actually want to leave. We spent 3 hours going line by line. Every clause that once named Henry as executor was changed. Emily's name took its place, and there was a new clause. One Martin would have appreciated. In the event that any listed beneficiary is found to have knowingly misused, manipulated, or coerced financial access from the testator during her lifetime, said beneficiary will be disqualified and all rights revoked. Roland read it aloud, then grinned. Elegant, final, and legal. I signed, not with a trembling hand, but with the kind of certainty only betrayal can sharpen. After that, I opened a new bank account, private shielded, connected only to me and Jerry, who helped oversee every transfer. My Social Security check, redirected. My pension? Moved the account Rachel had siphoned from, left open, with 0.13 in it. A paper trail she wouldn't see coming. At night, I kept my folders organized in a canvas tote behind my sewing machine. Rachel thought I was quilting again. She even complimented me oncey. Good to see you keeping your hands busy. If only she knew. I started withdrawing small amounts of cash, just enough to fit in envelopes. I bought gift cards with them, Visa cards. I wrote Emily's name on each, sealing them in bright red envelopes. One day she'd need a start, not from her parents, from me. On the first Monday of October, I scheduled 3 notarized letters to be sent via overnight delivery, 1 to the State Attorney General, enclosing proof of forgery, 1 to the Department of Elder Affairs, 1 to the bank's fraud unit, naming Rachel and her brother as co-conspirators. But I didn't send them yet. I waited, because I wanted to do it in person. Rachel's birthday was coming up. She was planning a brunch. Just family, she chirped. Keep it low-key? She didn't invite me, but I planned to show up anyway. Not with a speech. Not with a confrontation, just with truth. Printed, sealed, delivered. That week I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my collar. I saw someone who looked like a woman they underestimated. And finally I saw her smile. I arrived 5 minutes early. The brunch was already in full swing, white tablecloths, champagne flutes, monogrammed napkins with Rachel's initials in gold foil. Lauder drifted from the patio, the kind that sticks to your skin when you weren't invited. I wore navy, the same dress I wore to Martin's retirement dinner. Sturdy fabric, no shimmer, but real. I stepped through the side gate. No one saw me at first. Then Emily did. She lit up, but paused. Her eyes darted to her mother. Rachel stood near the mimosa station, laughing too loud. She wore a cream blazer and heels that had never seen a sidewalk. Henry stood beside her, sipping from a glass he barely touched. I moved slowly, deliberately toward the long wooden table. Rachel noticed. Her smile thinned. "Oh, look who decided to join," she said, voice syrupy and sharp. "I brought something," I replied, setting a leather folder on the table. "Well," she snorted, "unless it's coffee cake, I think we're good." "It's better than cake," I said. I opened the folder and began to lay out the pages, one by one, like placemats at a farewell feast. The updated will, the forensic signature analysis, the account transfer logs, the notarized affidavit from Roland, the fraud complaint draft to the state, the Department of Elder Affairs report, already signed, fell. A stillness like glass about to crack. Rachel's smile faltered. "What is this?" "Your signature," I said, pointing, "next to mine." "Except that isn't my signature. That's one you forged. You're insane." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm prepared." I turned to Henry. "You watched it happen." "You said nothing." "Mom, you let her take what wasn't hers? You let her isolate me. You let her treat me like I was already gone." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Rachel grabbed the pages, scanning them like they might vanish. "These don't prove anything." "They prove enough," I said. "And tomorrow they'll be filed. Unless you prefer them hand-delivered today? You can't do this." "I already did." Rachel looked to Henry, but he just stared. He looked older in that moment, smaller, Like a boy watching the tide come in faster than he thought, Emily moved toward me. Rachel reached out instinctively, but Emily stepped back. "Mom," Emily said. "Did you really do this?" Rachel's jaw worked.
Don't talk back to me.
But Emily wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking at me. "What happens now, Grandma?" I knelt down slightly eye level with her. "Now," I said, "we stop pretending." I stood. I faced the crowd, neighbors, friends, the school board member sipping grapefruit juice with a half-raised brow. "You've all seen me at these events," I said. "You've seen the lemon bars and the thank yous and the smiles. But here's something you didn't see. I still own the house. I still hold the deed, and I'm not a guest in this family." I paused.
I built this family.
A ripple ran through the crowd. Rachel looked ready to speak, but I raised a hand. "I won't stay. I didn't come to make a scene. I came to finish something." I slid a final envelope across the table toward Henry. "This is my formal transfer of executor authority. From you to Emily. Effective immediately." He didn't touch it. Rachel's eyes narrowed. "You're doing this for a child?" "No," I said. "I'm doing this for a future that still has room for kindness." I turned toward the path. The morning sun caught the edges of my dress. I felt the warmth on my back. I didn't wait for applause or apologies. I just walked, each step quieter than the last. At the gate, I glanced over my shoulder. Emily was still watching me, still standing, still proud. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. Because this wasn't a goodbye. This was a beginning. The silence afterward was different. It wasn't the cold, dismissive quiet they used to weaponize. This time it was stunned. Rachel stopped speaking to me entirely. No passive, aggressive remarks, no jabs at dinner, no sugary digs disguised as jokes, just absence. Henry tried to mediate. "She's just overwhelmed," he mumbled in the hallway 2 days after the brunch. I didn't answer, because I wasn't interested in excuses. I was interested in motion, so I began to pack, not in secret, not in shame. I stacked boxes in the hallway with labels in clear black marker books. Lennon's photos, kitchen, keep. I didn't rush. Each day a little more disappeared from the house I had once filled. Rachel noticed, but said nothing. Henry watched from door frames. Emily watched too, quiet, cautious, but not confused. The Lees on the lakeside cottage came through by Friday. 2 bedrooms, a screened-in porch, and a clawfoot tub. It smelled like pine and old wallpaper when I first walked in. I loved it instantly. Jerry helped me move the first few boxes. He didn't ask questions. He just lifted. On Saturday morning, I made one last pot of coffee in the old kitchen. The same one I had cooked in for 34 years. The same one Rachel once said had grandma countertops. I didn't take the coffee mugs, but I did take the cast iron skillet Martin seasoned by hand in 1993. Something still held warmth. That afternoon I sat in the back room with Emily. She played with the hem of my sleeve. "Are you mad at Dad and Mom?" she asked. "I'm disappointed," I said carefully, "but I'm not angry." "Are you leaving because of them?" "I'm leaving because it's time I chose peace." She nodded slowly. "Can I come visit?" I squeezed her hand. "Anytime you want." "You always have a key." Emily looked down, then back up. "Can I come live with you?" I blinked. "You're still a child, sweetheart." "Your parents?" She looked away. "They don't really see me either." That night I packed an extra pillow, just in case. By Sunday I was gone. No fanfare, no confrontation. Just a note on the fridge. "Thank you for the years. I needed to go find the rest of me." The lakeside air smelled like moss and maple. I opened all the windows and I breathed. The mornings are gentler now. I wake before the sun breaks the mist. The lake ripples with silver threads, like someone stitching the world back together in silence. I brew tea, cinnamon apple, and sit on the porch wrapped in Martin's old flannel, the same one he used to wear when he'd mend the fence, cursing quietly and humming old Johnny Cash songs under his breath. I don't hear voices shouting anymore. Only wind through pine, only the creak of the rocking chair, only peace. Emily visits on weekends. Sometimes with homework, sometimes with stories about school, sometimes with nothing but silence. And that's enough. We planted marigolds near the porch. She insisted on naming each one. "The yellow one is porch." The little white one she tucked in the corner. "Grandma," she said simply. I laughed. "Why white?" "Because it's quiet but it glows." She doesn't know it, but I cried that night. Just a little. In October, I turned the dusty sunroom into a reading corner. I stacked old books from Martin's collection, added a soft rug and 2 secondhand beanbags. The sign above the door reads, "You are welcome here."
just as you are?
Twice a week, I leave the door open for neighborhood kids. Some stay for 10 minutes. Some stay for hours. I never ask questions. I only offer tea space and the occasional cookie. Last week, one boy asked if I was a teacher. No, I said. But I remember what it felt like to be unheard. That counts. Some days Emily brings her friends. She calls me the quiet librarian. I don't correct her. One afternoon, I found a letter slipped under my door. Handwritten, shaky script. I watched your story. I'm 71. My son hasn't called in months. But you reminded me I'm still here. You gave me courage. Thank you. There was no name. Just a heart drawn in red pencil. I pinned it near my tea shelf, right beside Martin's photo. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge. Not even justice. But remembering we matter. That our voices don't age out of worth. That we're still authors of our own endings. Tonight, I sat on the porch with Emily curled beside me. She had paint on her jeans and dirt in her nails. I handed her an envelope. Red. Sealed with twine. What's this? She asked. A letter for later, I said. For when you forget how strong you are? She opened it anyway. Inside, just one line. You are not invisible. You never were. She didn't speak. She just hugged me tighter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. If you're still here, dear listener, let me ask you this. What would you do if the people you raised forgot your name, your worth, your story? Would you stay silent? Would you walk? Or would you fight back with grace? Comment below, what would you do if your silence was mistaken for weakness? And if you've ever felt erased, you are not alone. Not then, not ever.